Have you ever gotten that promotion or purchased that big new material thing you wanted, or gotten a bunch of money into your bank account only to find that it didn't really make you happy? I'm gonna talk about what I've personally discovered about these false happiness loops and what you can do about it. So we're gonna skip all the usual intro stuff. If you're here for the first time, this channel is called Heist. Typically we talk a lot about building, scaling, selling, and buying e-commerce physical products businesses, but we also talk about business, entrepreneurship, mindset, and I guess in the case of this video today, happiness. So if you don't know my story, over the last really 12 months, I've had some of the biggest wins, both financial and career-wise, in my entire life. And interestingly, through these experiences, I've learned as much about what makes those things not lead to happiness as I have for what those things actually unlock. So just to recap some of these examples for me over the last year, and this literally is not to be braggadocious, it's almost a cautionary tale, if anything. But about 8 months ago, I actually sold one of the first physical products brands I built up myself from scratch for a 7-figure payday. So I went from kind of one moment, kind of having a certain amount in my bank account, to flipping the app, the Chase banking app, and literally seeing a 7-figure sum in my account. And while that was an incredibly rewarding experience building and selling that company, what was kind of interesting and I would say really super anti-climactic about that was 15 minutes later, certainly in the days and weeks ahead, I kind of felt nothing, honestly. So you have these like grandiose things of you think these big exits, you sell a business, and you're gonna have this euphoric feeling. And I did for a minute. You had that dopamine spike for a minute, but then it kind of tapered off and it was back to normal. And honestly, it was a bit of a bummer. I thought it would feel better than it did. Fast forward a couple months after that, I've always really liked Porsches, and one car in particular, the 997.2 911, which is a 2010 year. For a lot of reasons, I just love that car. I bought a Porsche GT3, found it on the internet. The experience was super fun buying it, paid for it in cash, had it transported to me in Utah. And seeing it roll off of the truck was super amazing. Seeing it parked in my garage that night, the first couple times I drove it, it was an incredible experience. But same kind of deal, right? It had this like massive dopamine spike. And now while it's fun to look at, it's fun to drive, it's not what I thought it would be. Couple months after that, if I didn't learn that lesson the first couple times, I've got another lesson learned here this year. I spent a couple months really hard yards, like I'm talking 10+ hour days for about 8 weeks straight, building out an Amazon course, kind of showing others how you can build, scale, and sell ultimately an Amazon business. And it's something I thought quite a bit about, like what is my purpose in life? How can I kind of share this path with others in a meaningful way and help them unlock that? What's my life's work? And this is kind of something that was one of the things I thought that I could do towards that. Again, super fulfilling, built this thing out, had a 2-week launch period, made double what I'd ever made before in a year in an executive career. So like monetarily incredibly successful, brought in hundreds of students. But same kind of deal, like you think it's gonna be this one fairy tale thing in your head, it happens, you actually achieve or even exceed what you thought was possible, and it feels really amazing and fulfilling, but for a fleeting moment, and then you're back down to reality. So those 3 events in particular taught me a lot about happiness and chasing the achievement, chasing a financial reward, chasing a material item, chasing a certain thing in your career. While that can be really fulfilling and really rewarding, it's not what's going to directly correlate to happiness. And so it reminds me of the story, the fisherman and the businessman. So it goes kind of like this, and I might not get it perfect, but you'll get the concept with this analogy. There's this rich business guy, really successful from the United States. Usually takes 5 days out of the year to go on these fishing trips, and he goes to Mexico for this fishing trip and really just wants to go out and go out in the boat all day and catch as many fish as he can, and it's his way to unplug from all the stresses of kind of his life. But really successful business guy, multi-millionaire, owns everything he could ever want, and this is kind of his outlet. So he's out there fishing, and he happens to see kind of a smaller boat. Just a guy and his son, teenage son, they're out fishing, and they catch a couple really big tilapias, like amazing fish, all within about an hour, and then he sees them go back to town. And he's like, yeah, that's weird. So he continues fishing throughout the day, does this full, 10-hour fishing thing, comes back in, happens to run into that father and his son, and just kind of asks me, he said, hey, those are like 2 amazing fish that you caught, but I just don't understand, like, you could have been out there for 8 hours and gotten like quadruple what you just got. Why'd you just stop? And he's like, well, I don't know, like this is enough for us to eat today. I wanted to hang out with my kids the rest of the day. You know, I've got my buddies I meet up with at night. We crack a couple, cervezas and beers and smoke some cigars and just kind of talk about life. So I was like, I'll get some more tomorrow. And the business guy was kind of like perturbed by that a little bit. He's like, no, I don't think you understand the kind of opportunity with your skill set on fishing that you could really build here. You know, I'm this successful business guy from the US. I can tell you, I can get all these fish into major restaurants. You could really build up something substantial here. You could get some boats, some bigger gear. You know, if you spent 8-10 hours instead of just 90 minutes out there, you could catch a lot more. We could build a crew. You could actually probably build a production facility. And you know, in 10 years time, you could be a multi-millionaire and you could really call your own shots and do what you want to do. And the Mexican fisherman's like, I don't really get it. The guy's like, no, I don't think you understand. Like, you could literally 10, 15 years from now be the richest person in this entire village and in the city, and all of your family, you could have generational wealth so they don't have to worry about it. Like, I don't know if you know what you're sitting on. And the Mexican guy, kind of still confused, just says, I still don't really get what you're saying. Like, why would I do this? And he's like, well, you can do whatever you want once you reach that. You know, you could retire, you could do nothing all day, you could own whatever you wanted to own. Like, do you not see the benefit in this? And the Mexican fisherman looks at the American business guy and says, I do that already today. I go out and I fish as much as I want. I hang out with my kids and my family, and then I'm cracking beers and just enjoying life with my friends. Like, I've got that right now. Why should I go through all of those steps to achieve this thing when I'm living that life right now? And kind of a light bulb went off with this American businessman. And I think for me, I've had similar things happen this year, and I'm not like wildly successful. I mean, there's much more successful people in life than me. I don't want to make it seem like I'm some kind of big shot, because I absolutely am not. But it took me having a 7-figure amount in my account. It took me buying a supercar I always wanted. It took me building something in a short amount of time and have it exceed my wildest expectations to realize that those aren't the things that make me happy. And really the framework that I think has been the most powerful for me, and really why I wanted to leave my executive day job and why I wanted to build these businesses to begin with, is really to live life on my terms. And to put that into a kind of tactical framework, for me, it's about building the perfect average day. So I think we always think about these big trips or these big things we want to do, these grandiose visions, but on an actual tactical basis, those things are fleeting and they're dopamine hits. And it's really about living as many of those perfect average days in an annual period that I think really matter. So for me, what does a perfect average day look like? First of all, it's waking up without an alarm clock. Sometimes that's 7 a.m., sometimes it's 6:30 a.m., sometimes it's 8:30 a.m., but like I kind of just naturally wake up when it feels right. Hanging out with my dogs, so not having to rush to work and commute, just like chilling out with my dogs for a little bit. Working on things that matter and that I care about. So right now my criteria for work is basically projects and businesses that I find really compelling, and working with people that I really like, and doing it when I want to do it. And that typically looks like 2 to 3 hours of really focused flow state work on really high leverage tasks that matter, but really doing it in concentrated pockets, not working 8, 9, 10, 12 hours. It's working a couple hours, but a couple hours that matter on things I care about. And then really unplugging and spending the rest of the time intellectually curious, doing things that I want to think about, having ideas I want to have, having conversations I want to have. That's my idea of a perfect work day. And then equally important, and why I'm here in Tyler State Park, is to get outside and get into nature for at least 90 minutes a day. So in the summertime or warmer weather time, that typically looks like mountain biking for me, or cycling. So I'll go out for at least 90 minutes and just kind of get into nature, kind of make myself work, get the blood flowing. But there's almost this euphoric meditative state when you're outside in nature working out. So it could look like mountain biking, sometimes that's golf in the summer, and then in the winter, it's basically shredding powder and hitting the nice snow days and really just getting out there and skiing. But unplugging from the matrix, so to speak, and getting out into nature, experiencing nature for at least 90 minutes is part of a perfect day. And to wrap up a perfect average day for me, it's like hanging out on my patio and watching the sunset. You know, maybe cracking a beer and just chilling out and thinking about life, thinking about the day, thinking about what I want to do that week or that month, you know, whatever that might be. It might be hanging out with friends. It might be going out for dinner, sharing ideas, conversations with people that matter in my life. And it's not, again, these grandiose things. It's like a handful of just normal, everyday people that contribute to my life, and making sure that we have time to experience and share ideas. So if I have as many of those in a 365-day period as possible, I'm happy and I'm content. It's not these like grandiose dopamine spikes and these huge achievements. It's honestly kind of a boring life, if I'm honest. It's pretty monk-like. It's not anything spectacular. But when I do those things, I'm living in alignment. I'm happy, I'm fulfilled, and life seems to make sense. And the more that you're able to do that, I think the more happy you're gonna be. And it's not these things that you think would make you happy that lead you there. That's not to say that money and resources don't matter. Obviously, if I didn't pursue my physical products businesses and my entrepreneurship, I'd be commuting to work. I'd have to wake up with an alarm. I wouldn't be able to hang out with my dogs. You can't go skiing for 90 minutes in the middle of the day in a corporate job. I'd be in meetings I didn't want to be in, doing work I didn't want to do, and working with people I don't necessarily want to work with. Like, all those things wouldn't happen if you didn't have money. But money's a facilitator, not an outcome. So for me, the criteria is what's the amount of money that's sufficient to lead to as many perfect average days as possible? Can your mortgage be paid? Can you not have to worry about having this cloud of like debt over your head? Like, you don't want to have that going on because it's obviously not going to lead to happiness, but having a sufficient amount of money that will let you live those perfect average days. And for me, that's what matters. That's been one of the biggest lessons learned that I've had over the last year. And I hope those nuggets lead to you being able to find happiness as well. So with that, we'll actually wrap this video up, and I've got to contribute to my happy day. I woke up without an alarm. I hung out with my dogs today. Had a couple hours of really productive time. Came out here, shot this video. I'm now gonna hit the Tyler State Park and go mountain biking for a couple hours and have some fun. Probably wrap up the day with an IPA beer after my ride, and I'll edit this video tonight, post it tomorrow, and then rinse and repeat. We'll do something similar tomorrow and just have another boring but perfect average day. If this was valuable for you guys, we talk about building businesses, entrepreneurship, and mindset, and ultimately finding happiness. So if this is up your alley and you're new here, hit subscribe. Also, the YouTube algorithm computer has identified these videos that you might find interesting as well. So until next time, thanks for stopping by.